Hola, este video es sobre la conjugación de los verbos ER y IR. So remember, we've already learned how to conjugate los verbos AR. So this is about the other two types of verbs in Spanish. So just to refresh how you conjugate AR verbs, step 1, take off the old ending. So you can see here, I had the verb hablar, I took off the AR. Step 2, decide what form you want. So I picked yo, so I have to think of a yo box. Step 3, add my new ending. So my new ending is O for yo box and AR, present tense. So my verb is hablo. So ER and IR verbs are going to be exactly the same steps. However, here are your new endings. So write down these endings for ER and IR. If you haven't already, they are in your AR verb notes, assuming you took good notes that time. So I'm not going to practice the actual conjugation process in this video since you should know it already from AR. Just remember we have these different endings at this point. So for present tense, it's technically called the present indicative tense in Spanish. It corresponds to all three of these tenses in English. So let's say, for instance, I had the verb in Spanish, ellos comen, they eat. So typically in Spanish, we'd say they eat. I could also say they do eat or they are eating. So in English, this tense is called the basic present. This is called the emphatic present because you're emphasizing. And then in English, this tense is called the present progressive, which is where you have a gerund ending in ing, and that all corresponds to the Spanish tense called present indicative. So remember, in Spanish, all these tenses correspond to this basic tense of endings that we've been learning. Now I'm going to go over a few notes on what verb conjugations mean in general. So remember, we have to change the endings of a verb so that we know what the subject is. I also wanted to mention, in order to have a sentence, you have to have a conjugated verb. So for instance, if I were to write something along the lines of ellos comer, that is not a sentence because there's no conjugated verb in this case. However, if I were to write ellos comen, this is a sentence because I conjugated my verb. Going off of that, whenever I have a clause, there has to be that is equivalent to one conjugated verb. So think of your English classes where you've talked about like subordinating clauses, main clauses, dependent, independent. Each of those has one conjugated verb in it. So for instance, if I wanted to say, I like to eat because I am athletic, that would be a dependent and independent clause. So each clause, like I like would be conjugated, and then I am is conjugated because those are the first verbs in each clause. So like I just said, you only conjugate the first verb in each clause. So that's why we had things like ir plus a plus infinitive, because I don't conjugate that infinitive. We've had things like tener plus k plus infinitive. So once again, I'm not conjugating that infinitive in that case. So let's say I want to say I want to eat. I guess I'm hungry right now since we're in the food unit. So I want, I'm going to conjugate want. I am not going to conjugate to eat. Even in English, I can see if I leave to eat in infinitive form because I have to in front of it. So once again, conjugate first verb, which would be want in this case. Then there's also cases where you could have a compound verb. So for instance, I eat and drink at supper. So I'm going to conjugate both eat and drink in this case because it's all referring back to my subject, which is I. So I'd have yo como, I conjugate comer to eat, e bebo, I conjugate that because it's a compound verb referring back to the same subject, and la cena, at supper. So that's everything. Your biggest challenge with this is memorizing these new endings. OS A, emos, ACE, N. OS A, emos, ES, N. So we're obviously similar to AR, just E's and a few I's scattered in. And then remember these rules on when to conjugate, when not to conjugate. Gracias por mirar. Hasta luego.